Why did we lose Kashmir?
ये दाग दाग उजाला, ये शब गजीदा सहर, वो इंतजार था जिसका, ये वो सहर तो नहीं। बहुत करीब था हसीना ने नूर का दामन, सुबुक सुबुक थी तमन्ना, दबी दबी थी थकन। सुना है हो भी चुका है फिराक जुल्मत नूर, कहां से आई निगार सबा किधर को गई, अभी चराग सरे रह को कुछ खबर ही नहीं। अभी गिरानी ये शब में कमी नहीं आई, निजात दीदो दिल की घड़ी नहीं आई, चले चलो कि वो मंजिल अभी नहीं आई।
The state of J&K, 1947. This is the map of the state when the northern boundary was still undefined, and the Gilgit Agency in the north touched the Chitral and the Hazara tribal areas, which should have been the northern areas of Pakistan. Why did we lose 50% of the Kashmir state anyway? Was it an initial blunder? Were we overbid? Or were we caught napping? From 1846 to 1848, the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir had an alliance with the British East India Company. Thereafter, it was ruled by the British Crown directly from 1858 to the partition of India in 1947. What is the importance of Kashmir? Let's look at the importance of Kashmir to both India and Pakistan. From 600 BC and Magad, when the great Indian civilization spread across the Indus Valley and the Indo-Gangetic plains, Kashmir was well off the beaten path. And now, let's look at Kashmir from the direction of the early invaders. Historically, starting with Alexander the Great, Cyrus, Genghis Khan, Babur the Tiger, Darius the First, and countless other invaders came through the romantic Khyber Pass from Landi Kotal in Afghanistan to Peshawar. Again, Kashmir was off the beaten path. So what is it that makes Kashmir so important for both India and Pakistan? Internally, in the first half of the first millennium, the Kashmir region became an important center of Hinduism and later of Buddhism. During the 7th and the 14th centuries, the region was ruled by a series of Hindu dynasties, and Kashmiri Shaivism, a system of idealistic monoism based on the Shiva Sutra, arose. Over time, it subsequently became the physical depository for Indian family records. Islam came to the region with the arrival of Mir Sayyid Ali, a Muslim Sufi preacher from Central Asia and Persia, beginning in the early 14th century. Islam is now a majority religion practiced in Kashmir, with 97.1% of the region's population being identified as Muslims in 2014. We roll on to the 20th century AD. Great Britain exercised its control over colonial India in the areas of the map shown in red. There are two important areas shown in pink in the British Baluchistan and Barer in the central provinces. The British retained direct control over these areas as they were considered sensitive to contain the Russian hegemony in the northern provinces and the Indus Valley region, as also for a tighter control of the central region. The Bengal Presidency, which swept across the Indo-Gangetic plain right up to the northwest frontier province, had the most densely populated states of Punjab, UP, Bihar, and Bengal, with a population of 190 million. This was the most powerful presidency. The Madras Presidency, which administered the south and the central areas, had a population of 76 million and came second. And the Bombay Presidency, with a population of 29 million, came third. Through the 250 years of British rule, about 500 princely states with a population of around 45 million, which have been shown in the color yellow, were governed directly by their rulers, making a total population of 340 million. The seeds of the fragmentation on religious grounds was sown in 1905 by Lord Curzon when he divided the Bengal Presidency, the largest administrative division, into the Muslim majority province of East Bengal and the Hindu majority province of West Bengal. The overwhelmingly predominantly Hindu protest against the partition of Bengal, along with the fears of reforms favoring the Hindus, led to the Muslim elite in Bengal forming the Muslim League in 1906, with Aga Khan III as its first president. They asked for a new viceroy for India and a separate electorate for the Muslims. The Indian freedom movement moved on relentlessly. General Dyer's Jallianwala massacre in 1919 had its impact, and the crawling order issued after the European missionary Marcella Sherwood, who was beaten up in Amritsar, further elevated the friction with the British rulers. The India League emerged in 1922 with various luminaries from most religions, and Krishna Menon became the secretary. The League set the goal of full independence for India, and the unrest and the Quit India movement in 1942 also gained momentum. The Indian upheaval resounded in England too, and Bertrand Russell, Edwina Mountbatten, and Sir Stafford Cripps were some of the prominent elite who supported it. In India, the two-nation theory had started asserting itself based on the former Indian Muslim League's ruling class sense of being culturally and historically distinct from the ethnic Indians. It was propagated by Muhammad Ali Jinnah, who insisted that with the freedom, the Hindus and Muslims must be two distinct nations. The independence issue gained momentum, and the president of India League, V.K. Krishna Menon, in a clandestine meeting with the British Prime Minister Clement Attlee, proposed Lord Mountbatten as the only suitable viceregal candidate. After numerous discussions on partition by the political parties in June 1947, the nationalist leaders concluded that there was no meeting point and partition was inevitable. Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, and J.B. Kripalani agreed on behalf of the Congress. Jinnah, Liaquat Ali, representing the Muslim League, stuck to their demand, and Master Tara Singh, representing the Sikh, also gave his consent. Mountbatten Plan. Mountbatten took over as Viceroy, and the plan to transfer of power was given at a press conference on the 3rd of June 1947, when Lord Mountbatten announced the date of independence of the two countries as the 15th and 16th of August 1947. The plan's main points were: firstly, Sikhs, Hindus and Muslims in Punjab and Bengal legislative assemblies would meet and vote for which state they wanted to accede to. If a simple majority of either group wanted partition, these provinces would be divided. Sindh and Baluchistan were to make their own decision on which union they wanted to join. The fate of Northwest Frontier Province and Sylhet district of Assam was to be decided by a referendum. The separate independence of Bengal was ruled out by the Viceroy. A boundary commission was set up in case of the partition, and Sir Cyril Ratcliffe nominated to divide the two regions on ground. Transfer of power and the birth of two nations. The period also had to cater for the de-induction of the now expats to the UK. It was therefore now the responsibility of the newly formed governments of India and Pakistan for a smooth transfer of power. As far as Britain was concerned, it only wanted a safe de-induction out of India and had therefore ensured that the C&Cs and the military arm of the two new nations was controlled by Britain for 2 years thereafter. General K.M. Cariappa, the GOC Delhi and East Punjab, only did what he was told to do. This way, they could control the trouble spots militarily and ensure a smooth de-induction. The preparatory period after the Mountbatten Plan had brought out, firstly, that the emergent countries of India and Pakistan were not going to be a contiguous whole. The three large chunks of Baluchistan, Kashmir and Hyderabad were leaning towards independence. Their options in the new emerging world order could have international ramifications with the newly formed UN, especially so because the Nizam of Hyderabad was one of the richest men in the world and wielded considerable power and influence in the emerging new world. State forces and their ability to control civil unrest. Two of the largest states unwilling to join the Union of India or Pakistan were, firstly, J&K, a Muslim majority state with a Hindu ruler. Apart from the local state police, Maharaja Hari Singh had just 9 infantry battalions to control the political unrest, which, with the existing state of signal communications and road links, had limited coverage and capability. The 9 infantry battalions deployed over 2.2 lakh square kilometers of territory were unlikely to meet a changing military situation. The Nizam of Hyderabad, on the other hand, had 82,000 square miles of territory. The Nizam had just 6 infantry battalions and 2 horse cavalry units, which were to be used to control the political unrest. Vis-a-vis Kashmir, here there was a Hindu population of 81.4% versus a Muslim population of just 12.5%. In the meantime, both nations marched onto their independence. Developing situation in J&K. At partition, Maharaja Hari Singh had suggested a solution in the form of a standstill agreement in the hope of Kashmiri independence. However, with the Pakistani isolation of J&K on independence and in the face of the Muslim revolt with Pakistani militia support in Punch, the situation for the Maharaja was slowly slipping out of hand. The Pakistani army, of course, went ahead with their preparations. Initial Pakistani military action. By early October 1947, the GHQ Pakistan had issued orders for the military occupation of northern J&K and told its army to prepare a force of Razakars or volunteers to assist the armed forces. The plan envisaged 20 Lashkar groups of 1,000 Mujahideens each under command of regular army Pathans going in for the summer and winter capitals of the state of J&K. Pak's 7th Division and an infantry brigade were placed at Rawalpindi and Sialkot. D-Day was given as the 22nd of October 1947. The military action in J&K had been appreciated by the British government prior to their departure, and the two British CNCs nominated in the two opposing armies. There was no attempt, after 250 years of governance, to make a peaceful military transfer within the two new nations. After partition, the two British CNCs in the Indian and Pakistani armies then ensured nothing political filtered down to the ground commanders. Major Onkar Singh, posted in one of the Pakistani units on repatriation, reported that military preparations were underway. However, no action was taken by either side. And now the incredulous part. The two British CNCs of the Indian and Pakistani armies were running an operational situation in 1947 like a war game. Imagine the sadistic control of Generals Frank Mercervy and Roy Butcher, playing a war game with actual soldiers, moving, deploying, and fighting. They were controlling encounters with troops with whom they had fought alongside in World War II. Watching the unfolding of a bizarre civilian pantomime where thousands of innocent men, women, and children were killed, raped, and murdered. The behavior of these two chiefs is barbaric and an unforgivable sin, and a shame and disgrace to the community of soldiers, and their names need to be expunged from all records. There is a limit to what you should and can do for king and country. What these two CNCs did was an unforgivable sin which has been overlooked by history. Their names need to be deleted from all records. We soldiers are not willing to die for treacherous cowards like these. Commencement of operations. From the plains sector near Pathankot, you can clearly see the Dhauladhar Massif, which continues along the Pir Panjal range right up to Muzaffarabad, from where it continues into Pakistan. South of this, shown in green, is the hill sector of Jammu, which is primarily a Hindu region. North of this sector is the valley sector, shown in the light orange color, and this is primarily a Muslim section. North of that are the Ladakh and the Gilgit sectors. Force levels and conduct of operations in 1947. Firstly, the state forces dispositions. The headquarters of the two Jammu and Kashmir brigades have been deployed as shown at Jammu and Srinagar respectively. 1, 8 and 9 Jack rifles had been deployed in the troubled areas of Punch. 4 and 7 Jack were looking after the valley sector, whilst 6 Jack rifles was in Skardu. Development of operations. Poonch was already under pressure by the raiders who had revolted against the Maharaja. On the 22nd of October, 200 lorries with raiders advanced along the Muzaffarabad-Srinagar road and captured Lohar Gali. The Muslim company of Fojak joined the raiders. Brigadier Rajendra Singh came from Srinagar with a detachment. However, the detachment was disseminated and the raiders reached Uri by nightfall. On the 24th of October, the Government of India received a telegram with an urgent plea to dispatch troops. On the 26th of October, the instrument of accession was signed by the Maharaja. On the 27th of October, one Sikh landed in Srinagar and contacted the enemy in Baramulla. The battalion, however, was deployed at Srinagar airfield for its defence. On the 31st of October, 161 Brigade was airlifted into Srinagar and deployed around the airfield. Induction of Indian troops. As per the Maharaja's request, 2 infantry divisions from the Indian Army were inducted into J&K to regain control. The divisional forces were named the Jammu and the Srinagar divisions. The main road to J&K in undivided India had always been from Rawalpindi via Havelia on a class 40 axis. However, now, after partition, for the first time a large military force was being inducted through Pathankot on a class 9 road in a very dilapidated condition. The importance of the railhead at Pathankot. Every infantryman, tank, armoured car, gun, the entire first and second line ammunition, defence stores and winter stocking had to be inducted along this road. It started at Pathankot till it met the class 40 axis at Jammu, where it bifurcated to the Akhnur and Rajouri, as also across the Banihal Pass to Srinagar. It then went on to Dhras, Kargil, Ladakh and Gilgit. The troops had been inducted in aid to civil authorities. The 2 infantry divisions had a total strength of 50 battalions on mobilization for the initial operations. Their task was in aid to civil authorities to control the Pathan revolt in Poonch, as also to bring stability within J&K. No troops were initially detailed for the northern Kashmir and no one had expected to go to war with Pakistan. From India, no irregulars had been deployed in J&K. The Pakistan Army, on the other hand, was already supporting the Pathan revolt in Poonch, and induction of the Lashkars across a totally porous border into J&K had actually commenced. Military operations and troops had been inducted across the border. 7 Infantry Division, 9 Frontier Division and elements of 8 Division had already moved forward into northern Kashmir and were certainly prepared for military action. 15,000 tribals with weapons and ad hoc training had already been inducted and were in a position to pass back accurate military information. They had a total strength of 63 battalions. After the initial successes in Srinagar, Baramulla and Uri in 1947, the Indian offensive got bogged down and troops for the Zojila offensive could not be released in time before the setting of the winter in 1947. This happened primarily due to the lack of reserves and logistic problems. Operations in the mountains in underdeveloped areas require the ability to move quickly and reposition to changing situations, as also the ability to have a massive superiority at the point of decision. Neither India nor Pakistan had the capability, so these engagements became a slugging match with high casualties and little returns. Apart from the initial induction of 161 Brigade, there was not enough air effort for offensive operations in depth. Dras and Kargil were only cleared in November 1948, and there were no more reserve troops available to push into the Gilgit region. Military operations, therefore, made no progress at all. The ceasefire was signed on the 5th of January 1949. And now, from independence to 2025, Croatia. Since 1948, this border has been constantly active for the Indian Army. Initially, the accession of Kashmir into the Indian Union had been an Indo-Pak issue in which China had no role to play at all. However, the Chinese interest became politically relevant after 1961 when China annexed Tibet. 1962 onwards, the border with Pakistan remained active. However, Pakistan ran riot and raised the terror threat beyond the border too. They attacked Bombay, New Delhi, and the tensions between the two nations escalated in 2002, 2008, 2016 and brought the two nations to the brink of war on these occasions. On April 13, 1984, in a surprise initiative, India occupied the Siachen Glacier on the Saltoro Ridge overlooking the Nubra Valley. By doing this, we were now able to monitor moves of the Chinese in the Shaksgam Valley too, which made China uncomfortable. In 2013, Pakistan, in a major move, upgraded their relationship with China with a $62 billion economic corridor through the Khunjre Pass to Gwadar. This was agreed to by the two countries and financed by China. This was a bold statement by China to pronounce to the world the Chinese naval objective of power projection in the Indian Ocean. On the 5th of August 2019, the Government of India revoked the special status granted to Kashmir under Article 370 of the Indian Constitution. This further strained the tensions on the border, where China expressed their displeasure and showdown in the Galwan Valley in May 2021. Progress on the corridor by 2024. 43 projects worth 24.7 billion under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor have been completed. 8 projects worth 759 million are currently under implementation. Now, let's just have a look at the greater power projection in the Indian Ocean. The most central location in the Indian Ocean is the US base of Diego Garcia, in which the bordering ring countries have their interests in the ports. The Chinese have port and refueling facilities in friendly rim countries like Gwadar, Hambantota, Chittagong and Sitwe. We have our ports and listing ports along the coastal rim at Port Blair, Seychelles, Madagascar and the Mauritius. Gwadar is the only port connected to the Chinese mainland by road with an all-weather capability, so that the administrative balance can be maintained in accordance with the operational plan of the Chinese government. Although presently only the basic naval facilities exist, it is absolutely vital for China to have state-of-the-art port facilities available at Gwadar for them to project a credible Chinese naval power projection in the Indian Ocean. We are an age group of Indians born in the 1940s known in India as the war babies. We know what it's like to have lived under the British rule and seen signboards in our summer hill stations of no Indians beyond this point. We have gone through the trauma of partition, struggled after independence, believed in an emerging new world with the UN, the World Bank and the WHO, and seen India emerge as the fifth largest economy of the world. As soldiers, we have been part of the nation with its wars with Pakistan in 1948, 1965 and 1971, and also with China in 1962. We have been part of its terror pains of a growing nation and the economic revival. And now, at the end of this, in Ukraine, we have seen Mr. Donald Trump and the US look at Ukraine and its predicament in much the same manner as this vulture looking at the helpless child in this exceptional picture of the famous photographer Kevin Carter's, taken in the Sudan famine of 1993. These are now the values of the world, and although the pain of this carnage will never stop or be forgotten, in Kashmir too, we will wait our time and reunite Kashmir again.
चले चलो कि वो मंजिल अभी नहीं आई,